So, our son is 11 months old and he is crawling and curious about everything. The other day, he crawled over to our indoor potted fern and started playing in the potting soil. Well, he knows this is completely off limits, so I walked over and told him no. He looked at me and put his little hand right back in the potting soil. So I looked at him and said more firmly, no, and actually squeezed his little hand. Well, didn't faze him. He put his hands right back in the potting soil. So around and around we started to go. Just at that moment, my husband walked in, saw what he was doing, and my son looked at him, put his hand right back in the potting soil. My husband said, no. My son looked at him. My husband turned and walked away, went over, sat down on the couch, picked up the newspaper. My son looked at my husband. He looked at me. He looked at the plant. Then he just crawled off, went over to his little basket of toys, and started playing. So, my question is, what did I do wrong, or what did my husband do right?
Boy, that scenario takes me back to years ago. Gary and I were visiting a young mom, and she happened to have a 10-month-old, and they were in the process of training him not to touch their gas space heater. And he decided that he was going to challenge her, of course, because she had company, and crawled over and touched the space heater. And so she went over and swatted his little hand and stood there waiting for him to back down. Well, he chose instead to look at her and touch the space heater again, like, what are you going to do about this? And she swatted his hand again. Well, this went on a couple more times, and finally, out of desperation, she says, what should I do? And Gary said, well, next time he touches it, go ahead and swat the hand, but then come over and sit down with us. And so that's exactly what happened. He touched it again. She swatted his hand. She came, sat down. He looked at her, looked at the space heater, and then crawled off down the hallway to go play with his toys or whatever he was up to. And she says, well, why? What happened? And part of it was he was willing at this tender age of 10 months to take up the challenge. And she provided him an opportunity to surrender with dignity and actually to do the right thing. And I'm sure with 6 children and with Micah just coming into his little season of life now, you've dealt with this a few times.
Yes, the surrender with dignity is a great principle for all ages. But yes, we have seen it quite a lot recently with Micah. In fact, just the other day, he had crawled over and pulled up on our end table, and there is a plant, and we've chosen that plant to be a boundary that we're going to keep there. I kind of like that plant. We've cleared off some other things, but he found that plant, and of course, what do 10-month-olds like to do? He wanted to taste it and see how it tasted. So Ellen saw this, and she said, no, Micah. And meanwhile, I'm hearing this in the other room, so I'm coming in to see what's going on. But of course, Micah looked at Ellen like, what are you going to do about it? And continued to do it. And she said, no, Micah, again. And I came in and said, no, Micah. And it didn't really faze him. So I said, Ellen, I'm going to say no, and then we're both going to walk away. And we did, and Micah kind of looked at us and looked back at the plant, and then he got back down and crawled away. And Ellen was amazed. And I shared with her this principle of surrendering with dignity, and she thought it was neat.
Yeah, and that's what we want to leave you with, the principle of surrendering with dignity and providing your child the opportunity, even at these tender ages, of making a wise choice and obeying. Now, of course, because health and safety is primary and stewardship, if they choose to continue to challenge, then wisdom would dictate you pick them up and remove them from the scene. But first of all, give them an opportunity to do the right thing.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to see more, and check out the growingfamilies.life website to find more resources and to get connected.